It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk, a special 7 p.m. start time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. And I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 50 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine, the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, it's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy June, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, June's a very important month. I'll get to that in just a moment. But of course, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, as well as on Twitter and LinkedIn. Folks, I cannot say enough about, hey, all it takes is a second. Sharing is caring. Make sure you like Real Talk with Fernando Uribe and Jersey First on Facebook, of course. Follow them on Instagram and Twitter. In addition to making sure you subscribe to Jersey First on their YouTube channel. Plenty of new subscriptions, folks. Excellent content, of course. Wherever you get your podcast, whether it's on Spotify or SoundCloud, download the latest episodes of Real Talk, as well as all the great programming available via Jersey First. And of course, whether you're going to the gym, kind of getting summer ready, maybe visiting the in-laws, maybe just doing groceries or errands, whatever it is you're doing, folks, download it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet, and take Jersey First TV with you anywhere at any time all summer long. And without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say enough how proud I am to be on what I would argue is the dream team of Garden State media here in New Jersey. That is, ladies and gentlemen, Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative, hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader, do come out every Thursday via jerseyfirst.org/TV. And of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malilo and Stephen Rumbollo also air on Thursdays. And of course, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe comes to you live every Monday night, occasionally at 6 and sometimes at 7 p.m. But again, it's live every Monday night here on Jersey First TV. Folks, again, before I get to my very exclusive guest tonight, as I mentioned, again, June is a very important month. And why is it? Well, of course, folks, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV does celebrate a third birthday here in the month of June. I'll talk to you a little bit about that later in the show, folks, during my final thoughts. Obviously, 3 years on the air. I have a lot to say about how grateful I am. And of course, folks, the reason I'm so grateful is because of all of you that tune in every single week. Family, inner circle, friends, frenemies, haters, colleagues, classmates, whoever. Hey, you're the reason that Real Talk with Fernando Uribe is still going strong 3 years and counting. And speaking of going strong, folks, I also have a lot to say, of course, about the excellent traffic that you've come to rely on with Jersey First TV, and of course, with Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. As you can see there, folks, 12,700 plus views for the month of May. Folks, it's all organic, nothing boosted, nothing sponsored, okay? You want, folks, this is about as organic as the produce section at Whole Foods, okay? That's organic right there. And again, without all of you, I would not be able to celebrate this milestone. Folks, I'll talk to you about it a little bit later in the show. And of course, maybe I'll brag a little bit too in the process. But folks, it is an election season. And without a doubt, there's a lot to talk about during this election cycle, not just in 2023, but of course, going into 2024 and yes, into 2025. Who better to break it down right now here during this election season, as primary day is indeed tomorrow. Folks, he is the editor of the premier news site. Nobody gets the scoops. Nobody gets exclusives better than this guy. He's the editor of the New Jersey Globe, my good friend, and I think he's a fan of the show. The great David Wildstein joins us here on Real Talk. David, how are you?
I'm well, Fernando. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Hey, listen, privilege is mine, man. You're a busy guy, and the fact you're making time for Real Talk says a lot, so I appreciate that. David, tomorrow's primary day. I know the New Jersey Globe has done, I would argue, the best job of any news site in the state of breaking down really what's going on tomorrow. Let's start south and work our way up north. Obviously, in LD3, one of the most hotly contested primary races I can remember, especially in Republican circles. Who do you see coming out of that? Because it's gotten fickle, it's gotten testy, it's gotten very chippy. It's almost like Knicks Pacers in the late 90s during the playoffs. That's how it's gotten down there in LD3. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is 3 and 4. I mean, it is among the nastiest races that I've seen. And what's going on down there would make people, in your neck of the woods in Hudson County, it would make them blush. They would think, wow, they really play hardball down in South Jersey. But these are just phenomenal Republican primaries.
Now, certainly Ed Durr made history 2 years ago, unseating then Senate President Steve Sweeney, who pretty much had almost seemed like a lifer in that seat. And listen, Edward Durr, along with Steve Cush, ran what I thought was one of the better campaigns with little to no money. They really went after the Senate president at the time. And I would argue probably one of the biggest upsets in New Jersey electoral history. But hey, what have you done for me lately? That's 2021. It's now 2023. How serious is the challenge for Ed Durr this year?
Well, with all the and Ed Durr, I mean, we should, it is what it is here. That was just, it was a phenomenal upset. And I can't think of a bigger political upset than ousting the longest serving Senate president in New Jersey history. Steve Sweeney wasn't just the second most powerful guy in New Jersey behind the governor, but the Senate presidency in New Jersey is the most powerful legislative leadership post in the country. So beating Sweeney by a truck driver that nobody saw coming, I missed it completely. That was a big deal. But sometimes what you don't hear a lot about is that there were 3 upsets in that district. It wasn't just Steve Sweeney going down. Beth Sawyer, who's challenging it during the primary, she beat John Berzicelli, a 10-term incumbent and the chairman of the Assembly Appropriations Committee. That was that wasn't easy either. The problem is those two from the start, they just didn't like each other. And Fernando, you're an expert on New Jersey politics. You see the same thing I did, which is probably the most sadistic move ever by a group of modern day founding fathers is when New Jersey decided to go for multi-member legislative districts. The fight between Durr and Sawyer, this is common. I mean, it is more likely for running mates to hate each other than how they feel about the other party. They almost never get along. So that's not that surprising. What's surprising is that nobody in the Republican Party was able to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Nobody was able to go down there and say, no, you're not going to have a primary. No, you're not going to fight with each other. No, you're not going to disrupt the chances of holding this seat as we're trying to take control. And that to me is sort of the big story here, is that there was nobody able to do that. And whether you like him or you wouldn't see this kind of primary on George Norcross's watch. He would just simply wouldn't allow it.
David, I'm sort of reading between the lines here, and I know you're going to take the high road, but I don't have to. It just seems like that further reinforces what I've been saying for months now, if not going back to 2021. The NJGOP just is not a very competent mechanism. And I would argue that they could have stopped this. They could have prevented this, and I think, again, it's a reflection about how what I've argued for months now, how disorganized the NJGOP is. And I'm not the only person that thinks that either. But again, what are you hearing from the sources you talk to regularly?
So I see a different side of it, and I see, I know what they're doing behind the scenes in terms of trying to catch up on vote by mail and early voting and setting up infrastructures for field organizations. It's not a state party that has a governor, which means it's a different kind of operation, and money is hard to come by. But even the local leaders down there, they're all split. And yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate for them. You've got John Berzicelli running for that Senate seat. South Jersey Democrats are going to put millions and millions of dollars into that race, and you've got everybody fighting. And you go into the fourth, it's the same situation.
Let's look at some info here that I know that you've been very gracious enough to provide for the show and for our audience here. Give us a little bit of a breakdown here about really the slide here as we're talking about looking at Gloucester and Salem counties. What do the campaigns really need to do? Again, it's the 11th hour, primary days tomorrow, polls open at 6. What do we make of this map here?
Well, one of the things that's important is Salem County. Remember, Salem County is basically the size of Old Bridge. Union City is bigger than Salem, but Salem. And when I started this website in 2018, Democrats had won in the 2017 election, had won control of the board. Salem is now a red county. It's not at all politically competitive for the Democrats. Durr's got the organization line in Gloucester, which is 60% of the vote, but there's a full line running for Beth Sawyer. Cumberland's a tiny piece, and there is no line in Salem County, and that I think is what's important here. Is you really have to do well. You have to do everywhere, and I say this all the time, Fernando. My old dear friend Bob Franks, who may have been the best Republican state chairman the state's ever had. He used to say that's fine, all these tactics, but how are you going to get some of these votes? Because at the end of the day, you need 50% plus one. And Durr, I think Durr right now, there's not a lot of signs that Beth Sawyer has put a glove on him. In terms of moving beyond the fight and having an actual ability to win. Not a lot of money spent on either side, and there's a hot assembly race here too. And Beth Ann McCarthy Patrick, who was the third winner 2 years ago, nobody's looking at beating her. I think she's a lock, but you've got an assembly fight for the other side, the other seat.
David, when we think about Beth Sawyer, is this the end all be all? I mean, could she literally be finished if she doesn't win the primary tomorrow in sort of South Jersey politics, or could there be a chance for her to rebound in the future?
You never say never. And look, I'm not without noticing, my own story. I know what it's like to be left for dead on the side of the road. And you hear this all the time in politics. People come back, and Beth Sawyer's talented. Ed Durr is talented. I mean, that's the problem. You sort of, if you sort of, for the Republicans, wish they had just taken this winning formula and kept it together. So yeah, I think she could come back. Especially if Durr beats her in the primary and doesn't win the general. And Tom Crone, the Camden County Republican chairman, I have taken to quoting him a lot. He says, he points to these fights. He says, this is why Republicans can't have nice things, because you finally win something, and then you go and maybe you're just going to screw it all up. And I think that's what they might be looking at there. This is not a Republican primary in Mississippi or Alabama where you can fight it out and you're still going to win a general. This is fighting it out, and now the winner is going to go into a campaign virtually no money left at all, and try and hold that seat for the Republicans. And this primary is so divisive that somebody's going to now have to come in and try and create some unity on that ticket.
That's right, folks. If you're just joining us right now, it's 7:13 here on the East Coast. Joining me live tonight here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey Verse TV. He is the editor of the New Jersey Globe. David Wildstein is live with us tonight. David, let's move up a little bit north here. And I would argue that, listen, where I live up here in Hudson County, LD 33, nearby LD 32 and 31, respectively. I mean, it's as blue as Windex, okay? Yeah. Or those things you put in the toilet to, make sure it's as blue as possible, okay? But that's not the case. And I think that in Central and South Jersey, maybe even along the shore, there is a possibility, at least from what I'm hearing, that Republicans do have an opportunity this year, again, getting past the primaries and going into November, where they could flip some seats. I mean, the idea of flipping both chambers, I think, is not realistic in 23, even in 25. It's going to take time. But what races do you see where Republicans realistically could turn those districts red in Central and South? I don't see it in Northeast Jersey, but I see it in maybe Central and South. Is that fair to say?
It is. And, first of all, none of us know what the state and the nation and the world is going to look like come October.
Sure.
So we don't know what the political environment is going to look like. What this map did, what Al Barlas, who's about to go to the state assembly, did in putting together a map with the Democrats is this isn't a map for the first time. This is not a map that is locked in for one party or for the other. It's one that if the climate, if the circumstances are correct, they could win. So you start with District 4, which became considerably more Republican in redistricting. That's a swing seat. None of the Democratic incumbents are running for reelection to the jobs they currently hold. One of the assemblymen's running for the Senate, 2 new Democrats for the Assembly. This is where there's a big, nasty fight, but Republicans can pick up that district. You go to District 11 on the Jersey Shore, and that's a split district. Republicans won 2 assembly seats 2 years ago. They knocked out a pair of 3-term incumbents. Steve Denistrian is running against Vin Gopal, and that is a winnable seat for both parties. You go, and then you go to 16, where Andrew Zwicker is running for a second term. His opponent is Michael Pappas, a former congressman, a guy who, it's been a while, but was a heck of a proven vote getter, and knew how to run campaigns. He knew how to, he knew how to count. He knew how to press the flesh, and he, if you can raise the money, if the circumstances are right. 16, became a little bit more Republican in redistricting, and then you get into some tough races. In order to win, you've got to take 14. Not easy. That's that Hamilton-based district. Not easy. Doable, but really uphill. And then you go up to District 38 in Bergen County. That's the Paramus-based district. Joe Lagana is running again, and I think he's in pretty good shape. But again, if things changed, dramatically, that district can be in play. There's one Republican Assembly candidate, a guy named Barry Wilkes, businessman from Glen Rock. He's running for the Assembly. That's one I'm going to watch. If there's an upset, it might be him, and that. So you have to run the table to win this, and I mean, you can't lose anywhere. You have to hold districts 2 and 3 and 8. You have to pick up. You have to win in 4 and 11 and 16, and then in 14 and 38, and that takes them to control. Not so likely, but you never know. And I'm going back. I'm dating myself, but back when I was running campaigns in the 80s, I ran a committee. We won 14 assembly seats in 1985, and 4 of them, by the way, 4 of them in Hudson County.
Wow!
First Republican wins in Hudson County since Warren Harding's coattails in 1920. So miracles happen. They do, and Ed Durr is proof of that.
Speaking of, I know you mentioned the Shore just a moment ago, and we know that in 2021, while the 2 assembly seats did flip, Vin Gopal had to sweat that race out. It wasn't like called for a few days, and I know Vin Gopal. People will tell me he was nervous going into that, and I know it was a very, very close margin. Do you feel that maybe he's vulnerable this year? What other state senators or incumbent Democrats, either in the Assembly and or Senate, do you feel are the most vulnerable right now, David?
Well, go in terms of incumbents, Gopal first, and then Zwicker, and then you have this huge gray area before you get to Linda Greenstein and Joe Lagana. But there's not a lot of others. You're not going to beat Paul Sarlo. You're not going to beat Nick Scutari. Nobody's going to beat Brian P. Stack.
That's right.
Or Raj Mukherjee or Angela McKnight in the Bayonne, Jersey City district. So there's not a whole lot of places. The good news for Republicans is once you get out of the South, once you get out of the Atlantic County and the Burlington County seats. Mike Testa has made, that was a seat that Jeff Van Drew between the Assembly and the Senate had for 17 years. Mike Testa has made that a safe seat in 4 years and has won a courthouse. That would take a miracle to beat him. But once you get out of those 2 South Jersey districts, 2 and 8, the good news for Republicans is there's nobody else that's really in trouble. Everybody else is in very good shape.
No, fair to say. I know you did bring up another graphic here, looking up in this area again as we're moving into, LD24 around that area, maybe in North Jersey, though. David, tell us a bit more about this graphic here, because it's very interesting. Looking at 26, 25, looking at some of these numbers here. How do you see it for Republicans right now?
Well, the interesting thing about, and Joey Fox of the New Jersey Globe Star political reporter did a great. He's just does a great job on these maps.
Excellent job. Yeah.
He's
Excellent.
illustrates the data well. What you're seeing here is Joe Pinocchio faces a primary opponent, Tom Mastrangelo, county commissioner. It's a fairly new line, so it's not like the line has the advantages that other candidates with more mature lines have. But what you're seeing here is just how much of the new 26th district is new, where Pinocchio and Jay Weber have never run there before. Brian Bergen, who was in the 25th, has now been moved over to the 26th. So you look at for example, the whole area in Passaic County, Pequannock to Ringwood, that's all new. The only places that Pinocchio and Weber have run in for the legislature are Morris Plains, Parsippany, Montville, and Lincoln Park. The towns to the south that are in yellow, those were in Dick Cody's district. Haven't had a Republican senator for a while. And then Brian Bergen comes with Denville, Mountain Lakes, and the town of Boonton. So for him, he's a two-term incumbent, but he's like a brand new candidate everywhere else. So this is one of the primaries that everybody's watching, and it's I think it's one of the interesting ones.
No, certainly. And speaking of interesting, another interesting race in that peripheral, area, LD24. We have seen it. I interviewed Josh Akins. Not sure if you had a chance to watch that interview a few weeks ago. Solid interview with Josh Akins, and I like him as a candidate though, David. But it's gotten really, really messy and fickle up there. LD24. We all know what happened last week, a couple of weeks ago at the Roxbury School District Board of Ed meeting. I mean, again, as a diehard pro wrestling fan, I was like, this is like WrestleMania level. Like pandemonium at this school board meeting. And again, I know you're not in the business of sort of giving opinions about what was said, but it was, I think it's a microcosm though, David, of issues that could resonate statewide, not just going into November this year, but going into next year. And even in 2025, where parents, homeowners, taxpayers have a lot to say about school districts though, David. And you saw that front and center in Roxbury.
I did. And the reality is, this is an issue, and it's a very real issue, and it's an issue that's going to cause people to vote. In these campaigns, it's especially when you're running for the state legislature, and especially in the new media where you don't have daily newspapers really covering these races anymore. It's so hard for candidates for the legislature on both parties, even the incumbents, to be able to communicate with the voters and get to be known. So I think what you're going to see in this cycle and the next couple of cycles are campaigns that are being run on issues they're already following, that they already know about. If you have to teach a voter about an issue, then it's not going to work. So what are people talking about? Besides the obvious, which are taxes and abortion and guns. They're talking about what's going on in public schools on both sides. You have an issue where you don't have a whole lot of undecided, and it is one of those issues that's going to make people vote either for you or against you. And this is you and I have talked about this before. So much of the state of New Jersey have elections that are being fought in areas that are not competitive in November. So primaries are good. Primaries are great because
absolutely
you've got to have democracy somewhere. And if you're not going to have it in the general election, then have it in the primary and let people go out there and discuss things. And Josh Akins is doing. Is a candidate. He's doing a great job bringing up issues that are connecting with voters. And you've got four strong candidates in that district, and you don't get two open assembly seats very often. So it's good to fight over these things. And it's all over. You talk about the Jersey Shore. I'm I'm not going to say why whales and dolphins are showing up dead on the beaches. That's for people much smarter than me to be able to give you the scientific reason. But I'll tell you one thing: it's happening. It's not fake. It's happening, and people are paying attention. And if you start to get dead whales washing up on the beaches in the summer at the Jersey Shore, then you're talking about a major issue that impact elections.
Absolutely, David. And another thing too, I think that when it comes to these primary races, for example, in LD24 and other races statewide, I think Republicans have to be a little smarter than sort of falling for the trap that many on the left and some Democrats like to play when it comes to virtue signaling. Listen, abortion's not an issue this year in New Jersey. It's codified into state law, but yet Republicans are letting some Democrats get away with this, David. And it drives me crazy. It's like, it's not about pronouns. It's about property taxes. It's about affordability. It's not about virtue signaling stuff that, quite frankly, I have no use for. It's kitchen table issues. And I'm just afraid that Republicans and some conservatives are letting the far left Democrats in Trenton control the narrative. We know the horrible job Governor Murphy's doing. We know what the far left is doing with the budget and spending. Republicans need to be smarter, David. It just drives me up the wall, man.
Yeah, and by the way, I hear the flip side of this from Democrats, which is they're concerned that Republicans are starting to seize the narrative, that people in New Jersey are saying, wait a minute, my taxes aren't going, having gone down at all over the last 6 years. Whether it's what's happening at the Jersey Shore or what's happening in schools. Democrats think Republicans are doing a better job seizing this narrative. So maybe that's good. Maybe that's good for the process, that both sides are a little bit nervous.
No, you're right, David. But again, I think just the advantage Democrats have in the far left in New Jersey is that the liberal media echo chamber is in their corner. I mean, take your pick about what news site in New Jersey is openly partisan. I mean, I go after them all the time. Insider NJ, NJ.com, NJ Spotlight News, the New Jersey Monitor. It's like they're not really calling out, again, I think, irresponsible spending or taxes and stuff like that. It just seems like there's this insistence on, well, it's virtue signal and fear monger about abortion. I mean, Jesus Christ, David, like, honestly, like, women in New Jersey don't have anything to worry about when it comes to reproductive rights. You don't live in Alabama or Tennessee. If you're scared about that, move down there. But in Trenton, that's not the case, David.
Well, part of it is the media, and it's where everything's going. And you look at, you take the Star Ledger, their circulation, their paid circulation is down 81%. And I've made no secret. I think their editorial page editor, Tom Moran, he's just a moron. He's just a
David, they beg you once a week in your email for $1 for com content. I mean, don't even get me started on Tom Moran. He's useless.
But here's the thing. Here's what you and I know that Tom Moran doesn't know, and that is nobody cares what he has to say. Because when you have a newspaper that the circulation is down by what it is, 81%. You look at it from the other side's perspective too. I don't know if you realize it, but if you want to go into a Quick Check or a 7-Eleven or your neighborhood stationery store, and you want to buy the Star Ledger every morning, it costs $1,040 a year to buy the Star Ledger. So look at it from the perspective of your friends on the left, right, and people who live in economically disadvantaged communities. They're not reading what Tom Moran has to say because they can't afford to buy the paper. Yet still, and I don't want to get going on this too much because you'll never stop me. But you've got these legal ads, these subsidies that local property taxpayers have to run legal notices in a newspaper that, in order to have transparency, that people can see what ordinances are coming in, and they can't afford to buy the paper, and they're not getting the newspaper. So what good is that?
David, I would say, though, the one good thing that the Star Ledger is good for is if you're moving, like maybe wrapping expensive china or vases. Is that fair to say?
I have to tell you, I have been, over the years, such a fan of the Star Ledger.
Sure, same here. Same here.
I mean, I I was a paper boy. Can I still say paper boy? Is that okay? I mean,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
so I was a paper boy, and I mean, at 12 years old, it was basically your own business. You buy the newspapers from the Star Ledger for one price, and you bill your customers at another price. And the Ledger had it made because they had child labor. I was getting up every morning and delivering papers 7 days a week. Didn't matter what the weather was. Didn't matter if it was hot or cold.
You were dedicated. You were dedicated.
And and working for nothing, but it teaches you values. But it was a great paper. And as a political junkie, even as a kid, I would be on a Sunday morning, I'd get up early to read what their editorial page said, because it had influence. People cared what it did. And I mean, and even as a young adult working on campaigns, serving in public office, I'd go out on a Saturday night at 1 a.m. and pick up the Ledger at the 7-Eleven. Even if I've already paid for it to come to my house. Right. I wanted to get it early because I wanted to see what was in it. Now, Aaron, and by the way, I don't want it to all be about politics. Remember those days where you could pick up the newspaper, it's delivered to your home early in the morning, and you can see the sports scores from the night, the ball games at night?
Yeah. I mean, Dave, I'm showing my age too, man. I stay up for those ball games. I read the box scores. I like to stay up for that and then read them the next day. So I'm with you, man. Certainly. And again,
that's the problem. That's the problem. These newspapers, they suck. They just suck.
Yeah,
they don't know it. And
I'm with you. And again, we could go on the Star Ledger for an hour. Yeah. but let's move on. Let's stay in sort of electoral politics, but let's move on to next year real quick, and we'll get back to sort of the legislative races in New Jersey and some other races here too. Last week, obviously, Tom Kean Jr., the freshman representative in the 7th Congressional District, got his first Democratic challenger.
Yeah.
And she's been making some news rounds. I talked to her over the weekend, trying to see if Sue Altman will come on this show. I've interviewed her before. I don't think she'll have any problems talking to a conservative, but we'll see. But notwithstanding Steve Askew's rants on Twitter for the last few months on Sue Altman, she seems really confident that she can run a platform, even as someone as far left as her, again, having been the executive director of the New Jersey Working Families Party, that's going to resonate in CD7. Are her complaints legitimate about Tom Kean Jr., or is it too early to say?
It's, again, especially for Congress, you want to see, what the country's like in 24, who the presidential nominee is, whether the candidate's going to be somebody who a candidate's got to is going to want to run towards or away from, Sue's they're both. And so often in politics, we look at it and we think you either have you can either just have a good guy and a bad guy, and so often these races attract, and this is what you want, Fernando. This is really what you want, is you want two good people running for office, and maybe they believe in different things, and that's what the campaign's supposed to be like. Kean is shown that he can win. He beat an incumbent. He served in the legislature for a while. That district leans Republican, and if everything holds, and he continues to raise his money, that's going to be a tough district to win. But I know Sue Altman. She is way to the left of your viewers. But I'll tell you this: Tom Kean's going to spend a couple $1 million to define his opponent as far left anyway. So, this might make her more competitive in terms of raising money. And, so much of these congressional races, it's not about the candidate, it's about the generic ballot.
David, she's the first Democrat to declare, obviously, for 2024 in CD7. What are you hearing about whether or not she'd be, and again, for someone like her that has been so opposed to the line, right? And obviously we've heard a lot of complaints about the line from both Republicans and Democrats statewide and what it represents. And I think it's still pending, in a court case, obviously. But what are you hearing about whether or not maybe she would be that Democrat that the Essex County Union, whatever Democratic apparatus would get behind? I'm hearing that she would not be that candidate that the Leroy Joneses or the McCabe's or, those Democratic powerhouses that really have a big say in those county machines, not the devices, but the apparatus itself. I'm hearing that she can maybe raise some money, but she might have to maybe kind of cower down to the establishment Democrat that I think has yet to sort of be present.
I don't know. I don't know that they have an establishment Democrat. And the New Jersey Globe put out a list the morning after the election of here's 6 people Democrats might want to consider. I took a lot of crap about that of people complaining that Malinowski's body wasn't, was still warm, and I'm putting out the short list on it. But there were some establishment candidates there. There were people like Assemblyman Roy Fryman, but they don't want to do it. And I'll tell you, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, they don't go out and look for some mayor who has raised $9,000 in their career, and so I don't know. Sue, I asked Sue about the lines, and she's going to compete for the line. She's going to play in the game, using the rules that are before her. And when Fernando, when you look at that district and you look at the convention she's got to win, those are, when you come from the western part of New Jersey, if you're going to be a Democrat, then you're more likely a liberal Democrat. If you're a moderate, you're probably a Republican. If you're in Hunterdon or in Warren or Sussex County, for example, Bernie Sanders won Sussex County over Hillary Clinton in 2016 with 57% of the vote. So if you're a Democrat in Sussex, you're more like Sue Altman than you are the establishment candidate.
Sure. David, let me ask you this, because it's interesting when you look at Sue Altman's positions, and obviously running as a Democrat, we're going to see if the field gets crowded. Any chance you think the Norcross Empire might try to throw a wrench into that Altman campaign, or is it too early to tell?
Wouldn't you, if you were them?
Sure. Yeah.
Wouldn't you at least try and play there? One thing about George Norcross, and this is whether you like him or you hate him, and there's a lot of both in New Jersey. I met him on the assembly floor when we were young aides in 1979. He probably very upset. I'm assuming he doesn't watch conservative television, so I'll say it. But I said it to him. He had a horrible porn stash in those days. It was not the distinguished gray-haired guy that he is now, but he is the most pragmatic man I have ever seen in New Jersey politics. He is data driven. He gets the numbers. He was. There's no doubt that he and Steve Sweeney were close since they were kids. But Norcross was working the phones at 5 a.m. on the morning after Sweeney lost, trying to put together the deal for the next Senate president. He does that. So will he play in 7? I think if he can, he will, but he's not going to take his eye off the prize in 23, which means he's not going to spend his time or his resources, playing around in a 7th district Democratic primary until he has already figured out what he's doing in his South Jersey races.
No, absolutely. Another name coming up apparently for 2024, not congressionally though, a Jersey name though, David. Former Governor Chris Christie seems to be.
Never heard of him, Fernando. Have no idea.
I know, right?
I don't know what he was doing in high school, but I was.
The only good thing I could say about Chris Christie is a fellow Dallas Cowboy fan, but other than that, there is nothing appealing about his campaign. I know that Alan Steinberg will try to portray it differently. That it looks like a viable campaign. Of course, Isn't
Alan always wrong? Isn't Alan always wrong? If Alan says it's one way, isn't it statistically probable that it's going to happen in a different way?
Alan, he's a Nets and Mets fan. If anyone embodies, being wrong consistently, it's Alan Steinberg. But it's funny to me that, again, listen, operatives love to make money and they must be shameless. How can anyone not be whispering into Chris Christie's ear and saying, Chris, do me a favor. Just don't get involved in this race. He's not even polling at even 0.5%. Who in their right mind thinks that Chris Christie's a good idea to run for president in 2024? The field's getting a little crowded. Former Vice President Mike Pence announced today We saw Nikki Haley with a very strong town hall last night, in my opinion, on CNN. We saw the 45th president. We'll see Ron DeSantis soon. I'm sure we'll see Tim Scott, maybe others. But Chris Christie's just not, again, other than, and I've met the former governor, and we can talk Cowboys football all day, but a guy that left office with arguably the lowest approval rating of any governor that I can remember in New Jersey history.
Except for William Franklin.
Yes. But a guy that doesn't bring anything to the table.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, again, it's just shameless operatives, and they should be ashamed of themselves. They're stealing money by trying to tell this guy he should run for president. That's a bad move, David.
See, but I think it might. And remember, I really, it's just the big secret, right? I really do know him.
Sure.
And this guy has tremendous hubris. He has an ego, that is just beyond what you really see. And when it comes when it comes down to it, nobody's telling Chris Christie to do anything. It might be the opposite. He's probably bringing these poor schlumps in along, and they're like, what are we going to do? How are we, now we're stuck, and we're going to get tagged with this loss, all because Christopher's, ego is too much. The problem is he's not the guy that he was a decade ago. He's become he's sort of clownish. He's sort of a cartoon character.
It's not 2012. It's not 2012 anymore, David.
No, it's not. And and by the way, that should be the lesson to everybody, whether you're a school board member or whether you're a governor. When it's your time, just go for it, because that opportunity may never ever present itself again. But Christie will, he will take this a little further than he should, frankly. And I may be wrong. I may give you an Alan Steinberg-like prediction here, but I think he's not a dumb man.
Agreed.
And so I think he'll take it as far as he can without being embarrassed by people actually voting for somebody else other than him.
Sure. David, let's look into 2025 real quick here. Up here in Hudson County, we know Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop announced a few months ago he's the first Democrat to announce his candidacy for the Democratic primary for governor in 2025. He can raise money. We know that. He's picking up endorsements little by little. And there's, listen, Stephen Fulop checks off a lot of boxes. But I'll continue to argue that, again, this is not a personal attack on him, because I know him personally. But Anthony Veneri being the new chairman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, which, again, still can be a very powerful Democratic apparatus statewide, I don't know if Anthony Veneri's that person that can get Steve across the finish line, that can help him broker deals. Because if Ross Baraka jumps into this race, and Representative Mikey Sherrill and Representative Josh Gottheimer, I hate to break it to people, State Chairman Leroy Jones, Carl DiVincenzo, they could throw a wrench into Steve Fulop's plans real quick. Where am I wrong in my analysis here?
Well, first of all, Fulop is pretty good at this himself.
Yeah.
And I don't know that he needs Anthony Veneri to make these deals for him. And you're from Hudson, that in Hudson County, and I don't mean this with any disrespect to Commissioner Veneri, but the county chairman in Hudson is essentially the executive director of the Hudson County Mayors Association. I don't think anybody's going to be looking to him to put these together. If anything, you're looking at Nick Sacco, you're looking at Brian Stack, you're looking at Craig Guy, who is about to become the new county executive. I don't think it's Veneri, but Fulop has been playing out this race in his head for 8 years.
Yeah,
and he he's learned a lot since that last run. He has grown up a lot, and I think he is not to be underestimated. And the part of it that again we don't know is how big a field this is going to be. I remember the fields in the 70s and 80s where you'd have 10 candidates, and I don't mean the dregs of humanity. I mean like quality candidates who on paper are good, who had some support and some money. And so the question is, how many people are going to be in the race, and how much money, and how many votes do you need to win? And if it's a two-person race and you need 50% plus one, that's different than it's a crowded field. And if I can get 30% of the vote, I'm the nominee.
Fair enough. On the Republican side, David, right now there's not one openly established candidate yet. I think it's, speculation that Jack Ciattarelli will give it a go around for a third time coming up in 25. We hear names like Bill Speedia, the NJ 101.5 FM host, who's much more conservative than Jack. We're hearing names like Mike Testa, maybe some other names as well. But again, I like Jack personally. And I've run into him, and he's a guy I can call anytime on the phone, and he'll take my call. But, that race in 2021 was so winnable. There were so many negatives about Governor Murphy. Again, coming out of COVID, the state still remained unaffordable. And Jack, I think, was just too nice during that race. And mind you, I was the only guy that called that race close. Everyone said, for you're out of your mind. I said, no, trust me, there are pockets of the state that don't like Murphy. I'm going to stay home. But again, 38% of registered Republicans voted in 2021. If even so much 10% more vote, we're talking about a different race here. And I just think it's like people looked at Jack and they were not very inspired. I'm afraid that Jack might evoke the same sentiment by some Republican voters in 25, because what's he going to say differently in 25 that he didn't say in 21, where some people just look at him and say, I'm not really inspired. On the flip side, Bill Speedia, very vocal, very emphatic about his positions, but statewide, again, and I like Bill personally, he's a friend of mine, but can he win a statewide race? Can he get county machines and county chairmen on his side? That remains to be seen too, though, David.
Well, these are great questions to bring up, because Ciattarelli is probably became the front runner when he announced the week after he lost that he was going to run again. He's the standard bearer, but that doesn't mean a lot. And I remember Bob Franks almost beat John Corzine in a U.S. Senate race, and then 9 months later he lost a gubernatorial primary to Brett Schundler. So I don't know. Ciattarelli's got a base there. There were so many things that broke his way. And there were so many things that were forced errors, not just by other people. I'll give you two quickly. One is, and again, I'm not here. I'm your guest. I'm not here to attack these people. But Ciattarelli, you talk about the turnout. Ciattarelli suffered by a national message of don't trust, vote by mail. And don't trust early voting. And that was to Ciattarelli's detriment, because Murphy kicked his ass on the vote by mail stuff because Republicans were being told it's not safe, it's fraudulent. Personally, I don't believe that. I think, there is not a whole lot of evidence of voter fraud in New Jersey. It happens from time to time, but it's not like Jersey's got the reputation of the old Frank Hague days anymore. That's just not how it's done. The other thing is the National Republican Party didn't come in. They didn't see it, and they didn't spend the kind of money that they should have. And even as people from New Jersey were going down and saying this is a winnable race, and you go to the primary, this is, it's hard to call it right now. I don't know what's establishment and what's not establishment anymore. With Bill Spady and George Gilmore.
David, it's interesting because the RNC really went to bat for Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, that other gubernatorial race in 21. And it seemed like he ran a much more inspiring campaign, and he won. And again, I think he even knew that vote by mail was, hey, listen, we have to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. And I think that's what helped him also win in Virginia. To your point about Jack, I think that Republicans statewide looked at it, to your point, not as very trustworthy, and it came back to bite them.
It did. And there's no doubt it's turnout, and Democrats have turnout problems too. Democrats have this enormous problem with turning out urban voters right now, where Phil Murphy won re-election because of the suburban higher income, highly educated train station town Democrats, places where Republicans used to win big, like Ridgewood and Milburn and Maplewood, that are now Democratic strongholds. So So, somebody's got to figure out this messaging, and this is the needle, the thread here. I know it's probably a cliche, but you've got to turn out conservative for a Republican to win. You've got to turn out the conservative Republicans in the western part of the state and South Jersey, but at the same time, you've got to make inroads into suburban voters. You're not going to get the urban voters. Forget. I mean, that's a pipe dream, Fernando.
Yeah, independence. I think independence as well. I think that's also a big resource. David, real quick, getting back to politics in 2023, not legislatively, but a race that really caught my attention, and I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. A fellow member of Cowboy Nation, former legislator Jamel Holley, looking to unseat the mayor in Roselle. I'm hearing that Jamel has better than a puncher's chance. He can actually win. And I know that Nick Scutari is a little nervous. I know he was trying to mobilize some people to go door to door in Union County for the Union County Democratic, organization, trying to help out the incumbent there. I think Jamel's got a really good chance tomorrow to win that primary. And I think, you know what? Don't sleep on Jamel Holley.
No, I agree. I would agree with you completely. It's hard for people like you and I to call these races because we're data people, and in the absence of polling or any real numbers, we'd be foolish to say this person's going to win and this person's going to lose just based upon bits of information that we hear. But one thing I can see about Holley is he used to be mayor of Roselle before he went to the assembly, and when he ran for the state senate, he didn't do well at all in his state senate primary against Joe Cryan. But he did in Roselle. He got 50, I think it was 58% of the vote in Roselle. So that's data. That shows that the guy's popular there, and he's running a good campaign. And I'll tell you, I can't speak for anybody else, but if he wins, I think part of the narrative that I'm going to be going with too is hey, hey America, look at this, an open, vocal supporter of Robert Kennedy Jr.'s primary campaign against Joe Biden just won a Democratic primary for mayor. Don't forget that Jamel was on stage with Kennedy in Boston when he announced his candidacy. So this, and I'm not saying Joe Biden's going to lose Roselle next year because endorsed voters make up their own minds, but it's going to be something to talk about. And I think Holley's got a really good chance of winning this.
I agree. David, before I let you go, aside from the legislative races we just talked about, I know we just mentioned mayoral race just moments ago, but any other races, again, leading up to primary day tomorrow that maybe are going under the radar and maybe sort of like the larger media apparatus in the state isn't really covering?
Yeah, well, Toms River, one of the biggest towns in the state. You've got a three-way race for mayor there with an incumbent on the organization line and a county chairman who'd probably rather have somebody else. I think that is hugely important to watch. There's 75 contested local primaries up and down the state this year, and each one of them, and that's why that's I'll be very quick this on part two of my railing against old media, but you've got these local news. It's just so important, and there's no coverage. There's just no coverage of these races. You look at the Morris County freeholder race, Paul DeGroot running off the line against Typhoon Cell, and he ran against Mikey Sherrill last year. He got his name known. I wouldn't be surprised to see Paul DeGroot win that. Not at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. David, before I let you go, part of a staple of this program is, I usually look at the news feed over the weekend and leading up to Monday. I might see an article or two, an opinion column of just something that doesn't sit well with me, and journalists that don't sit well with me. And I often mention that so-and-so is doing a disservice to us as consumers of information and data in media. I know you'll take the high road here. I go after a lot of journalists in New Jersey. I usually call them propagandists. I think they've gone beyond just being journalists and they've just become full-blown propagandists. Do you see that also as a problem? Again, I call them out by name. I don't want you to do that if you don't want to, but I would say that I think there's a big problem because there's a lot of news sites, NJ.com, the Star Ledger, Insider NJ, NJ Spotlight News, and New Jersey Monitor. It just seems like these are the apparatuses providing news, columns, but you're the only news site that A, gets it right, B, you're breaking stuff, and you are getting it right, I would say, almost nearly the entire time. How concerned are you about these? It just seems like, again, I don't want to sort of blow up your ego, Dave, but it seems like the New Jersey Globe is up here, and everybody else I just mentioned is like, oh, they're just so far down. Is that a concern, I think, for New Jerseyans where they're just not getting good news anymore?
Yeah, and it scares me because so many reporters want to be pundits. And I'll come on and I'll talk to you about this, and we've done our, we do our live streams on occasion at the Globe where I'll sit here like I've done with you tonight and give some opinions. But the writing, what you talk about with a race, what you talk about with issues, the key is to not let people know how you feel about them. It's got to be objective. And I tweet out every Sunday clips from the Star Ledger in 77 to 78.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And when the Star Ledger was great, but the thing that really strikes me when I reread these clips of my youth is that columnists could explain an issue to people, complicated issues, without showing a bias and without personal attacks. And I think that's one of the problems. And you've got guys, whether it's Moran or or people of equal intelligence like Mike Kelly at the Bergen Record, they don't understand. I don't think they understand what their role is here. And I'll say quickly, and this is a huge problem for New Jersey voters, is I don't need to hear what Tom Moran thinks about what's about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. Believe it or not, I can find smarter people who have direct sourcing to talk about that. I don't need Tom Moran to watch CNN or Fox and then come to an opinion, because I can watch CNN and Fox myself. I don't need Moran as my middleman. What you need these guys to do is go to town council meetings, go to school board meetings, go to county government meetings, really report. I mean, I remember the days where the Star Ledger had a dozen reporters in the State House. Now they're down to 1.25 reporters covering the whole place. And it's too much. You've got to just know what your lane is.
I mean, but David, is it also too sort of like the sign of the times about technology where, like, for example, I mean, I'm not trying to be mean-spirited, but, Matt Friedman lives like an hour and a half from New Jersey, and still he's covering New Jersey. He runs the playbook, which, again, is still reputable.
Yeah, I live further than that. I live further away than that. So
understood. And I think people give some scoring to that. I think people maybe have reconsidered the way they look at the word journalist. I mean, David, people look at me, and even though I do opinion journalism, they'll be like, Uribe's not a journalist. He might think he is. He's not. I mean, Miranda said that openly. Others have said that
that's why sometimes they're idiots, because every time Tom Moran goes and he stands there on his soapbox and says, "You're not a journalist, and you're not a journalist, and you're not a journalist." I just want to make sure I'm right. So I want to fact check. So I'll go and I'll pull out. I've got one on my desk behind me, but I'll pull out that little thing called the Constitution of the United States, and I'll look at the Bill of Rights, and you go in numerical order. First Amendment comes first, and if you read it, I can't find the part where Tom Moran or Mike Kelly or some of these other bozos are able to determine who it is, who's a journalist and who's not. That's
sure.
People, what we have to do is we have to establish trust with the people who watch us, who read us, and they have to over time think, and I don't care, by the way, I don't care if people like me on a personal level or not. I'm not warm and fuzzy, and I'm not, I'm never the most popular guy in a room. But what they have to do is look at the New Jersey Globe, or they have to look at, watch Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, and they have to say, you know what, I trust him. What he's telling me is the truth. And you have to feel confident in that. We go back to that old cliche of Walter Cronkite. When Walter Cronkite said it, you believed him, and you believed him because over time he built that trust. You don't have that here. You even look at recent history, Michael Aaron, whether you thought he was to the left or to the right or too much to the center or whatever, he was a truthful, honest, decent guy. His successor is not Michael Aaron. His successor is not Walter Cronkite. His successor is, maybe not one of the brightest bulbs around. So
David, you're being kind. David, you're being really kind, because I've said worse about Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave has been on my radar for a while.
Yeah, but at least if you're not going to like somebody, I'd rather not like somebody who's smart and fair than not like somebody who's dumb and biased.
Fair enough. David, before I let you go, great conversation tonight. Folks, we're just, the clock has struck 8 o'clock here on the East Coast. My guest tonight here is the editor of the New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein. David, before I let you go, I want to thank you for your time, because you're always so insightful. Nobody breaks down data like you do. You have such a good pulse. I think I would argue you have the best sources of anybody in the state. I mean, what I would give for your SIM card on your iPhone. Okay, what I would give for
don't discount Joey Fox. Also, Joey Fox is just
shout out to
brilliant young reporter.
Shout out to Joey Fox. Amazing. All of your staff at the New Jersey Globe is incredible. I want to thank you for your time, because again, listen, not everybody. David Wildstein doesn't follow just anybody on Twitter. He doesn't just talk to anybody. So I feel very privileged, David, that you take the time to talk to me and come on this show, because it tells me you respect what I do, and that means a lot. And I really appreciate that, David. Once again, thank you for joining us here. I'll give you the last word tonight here on Real Talk.
Well, just the last thing, the only responsible thing for me to say on the eve of an election night for people who go to the polls tomorrow is first of all, if you haven't voted already, vote only once. But vote. Make sure you get there by 8 o'clock. Don't walk in at 8:05 thinking it's a fungible deadline. But most important, number one, if you mailed your ballot in, go on Track My Ballot on the Division of Elections website. Take responsibility for your own vote. Make sure that it's been received. If it wasn't received, if it doesn't show that they got it back, go to the polls tomorrow and vote provisionally, just in case. And I close with this. If you go to the polls tomorrow and you think you're eligible to vote, and somebody there doesn't want to let you vote, if they want to, potentially disenfranchise you, do not leave the polling place. Stay there. You have a right to appear before a judge tomorrow who can determine whether you can or you can't vote. You can vote provisionally, a provisional ballot, not as fun as going into the machine and clicking on a name, but a provisional ballot counts the same as everybody else's. Do not leave your polling place without voting.
Well said there, folks. He is the editor of the New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein. David, thank you again for joining me here. And I really appreciate, again, your respect for this program and my brand of journalism. It means a lot, David. Again, best of luck to you in everything you do. Let's do this again soon here on Jersey First TV.
Sounds great. Thanks, Fernando. It's always fun.
Thanks again. Have a good night.
You too.
Take care. Folks, great episode there with David Wildstein, again, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. Folks, really nobody breaks down what's going on in New Jersey media any better than David Wildstein. And certainly if you don't subscribe to the New Jersey Globe, you don't follow him on Twitter, if you don't follow him on obviously Facebook, I mean, what are you waiting for? Okay. Click on that button, obviously there, make sure you're on the mailing list and get all the scoops, because hey, nobody does it better than David Wildstein via the New Jersey Globe. So certainly, again, I want to thank him for his time, and we'll certainly have him on later on during the summer months, again, as we will be approaching November, and a lot to talk about, certainly with all 40 legislative districts that will be contested this November. Folks, before I let you go, obviously, I do want to, normally during my final thoughts, I pick on someone that, quite frankly, is doing a disservice to New Jersey journalism, but that's not the case today. I'm going to talk to you about someone that is doing an incredible service to New Jersey journalism. And yeah, well, spoiler alert, it's yours truly, of course, here on Real Talk. And of course, folks, make sure that you share it on all of your social media. Again, make sure you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, subscribe to Jersey First TV on YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast, obviously on Spotify or SoundCloud. Take Jersey First TV with you anywhere and anytime during the summer months here in 2023. Folks, I can't say enough again about how proud I am to be on the dream team of New Jersey media. Yes, folks, it's Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative, hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader, air every Thursday. So definitely want to check her out. Of course, Bridging the Gap with AJ Malilo and Steven Rombolo. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot say enough about how interesting their content is. New episodes air every Thursday. And of course, new episodes live every Monday night of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe air with Jersey First TV. Folks, again, as I start off on the program, it is the month of June. And quite frankly, when I think about the month of June, I think about, hey, the third birthday, of course, of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. That's why the month of June is special for me. And again, I want to sort of highlight that this evening, why June, again, is so significant in my eyes. Of course, folks, happy third birthday to this program. And as I said, certainly during my final thoughts, I like to sort of share them and tell you who's doing a disservice to New Jersey journalism. Well, this week, again, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you about the person that is doing you an immense service in New Jersey media, and that is yours truly. And folks, when I started this project on June the 1st of 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, okay, I have to thank John Edmonds IV and Jordan Komowitz with Eyes on NJ News, who had approached me during the year in January, again, not knowing what would happen in 2 months later. But in the height of the pandemic, as we were all home, wondering what was going to happen with family members, with our own health, I decided to start Real Talk with Fernando Uribe on June the 1st. And folks, I got to tell you, it was a really volatile time for me, having just lost my grandmother 2 weeks before. I was an emotional mess. I'm not going to lie to you. But I found the strength and I say, hey, you know what? I think Abuela would be proud that I did this. Abuela would be proud that I went out there and started Real Talk. And I did that. And I wasn't sure what traffic it would do, but it did amazing traffic. And certainly during the summer of 2021, Eyes on NJ News and I did part ways. We felt it was not just a good fit anymore. I still love John Edmonds IV and Jordan Komowitz, great guys. And certainly, I was able to sort of move on and branch out by myself. And Real Talk with Fernando Uribe was able to be very self-sustaining. Certainly, as I was still working with Insider NJ, hosting another podcast, hoping maybe, hey, you know what, maybe it'll catch on with Insider NJ. But of course, that would require its general manager, Pete O'Neillia, and its editor, Max Pizarro, to sort of, get off their ass and do something. And certainly they didn't see my vision of what Real Talk would be. Subsequently, right around the new year of 2022, I had the privilege of talking with former representative and congressional candidate Rosemary Becky, of course, Ashley Smith, and the management at Jersey First. And, they believed in my vision. They believed in what I wanted Real Talk to be. And since then, since really February of 2022, Real Talk continues to bring you excellent traffic. And quite frankly, I couldn't be prouder of teaming with an amazing group of women like Ashley Smith, like Rosemary Becky, that comprise Jersey First TV. And of course, all the great staff. Obviously, our producer, Jacob, does a great job with our promo photos and everything else. I love you all. And again, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping to make Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV an ongoing success. And of course, speaking about success, folks, and you know what? I'd like to take the high road, and maybe that would be nice, but nah, that's not fun. But folks, one of the great things about Jersey First TV, and of course, Real Talk, is that month after month, show after show, folks, the numbers speak for themselves. And whether it's family, friends, frenemies, haters, classmates, colleagues, you're all tuning in every week. And I'm proud to announce that for the month of May in this year, we're looking at over 12,700 views, all organic. Okay, folks, not like some of these other, Mickey Mouse journalists and activists and columnists, right? Or academics, right? With the little Mickey Mouse shows and your Mickey Mouse traffic. Everything here is organic, folks. It's about as organic as Whole Foods. So when you walk into the produce section, there's nothing more organic than the Whole Foods there. And of course, Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. And folks, again, it's all organic traffic. Okay, nothing boosted, nothing is sponsored. It's all organic, folks. So while these, so-called journalists over there are, waking up in the morning and saying, I wonder, can I ever be great like Fernando Uribe? Well, here's a spoiler alert. Nah, you're not going to be. And again, folks, that's why, frankly, we're not the same. And of course, let me be a little humble for a moment. That number you see behind me, that would not be possible, ladies and gentlemen, without all of you at home who once again take the time to tune in every Monday night, to share the replays, to opine on the pages, on social media, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, or on the website, and you share the content. Again, these numbers, this success would not be possible without all of you. And for a lot of, so-called journalists who are basically propagandists, who don't appreciate my brand of opinion journalism, here's a spoiler alert. I'm not going anywhere. So you're just going to have to learn to live with me running my mouth, wanting all the smoke, because I do. I want all the smoke. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this traffic would not be possible without all of you. And as I said before, we have Mickey Mouse journalists, Mickey Mouse academics, Mickey Mouse activists with the little Mickey Mouse shows and Mickey Mouse traffic. That's not a problem here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. So you know what? If you think I'm insufferable now, let me be just a little bit more. And let me quote one of my childhood heroes, the nature boy Ric Flair. For people that always have something to say about this media brand of mine and my brand of opinion journalism, I'm going to quote the nature boy. Whether you like it or you don't like it, you better learn to love it, because Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV, as you can see with the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, is the best thing going today. Woo! You know what? For everybody in the back, I'll say it again. Woo! Folks, it doesn't get any better than this. So for everybody else trying to catch up, good luck. You're not catching me anytime soon. And again, to all of you, thank you for making Jersey First TV and Real Talk the success that it is in 2023. Folks, that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank our amazing guest tonight, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein. Again, just incredible information and data. Hey, nobody breaks down primaries and election season in the state of New Jersey. Nobody does it better than David Wildstein, again, with the New Jersey Globe. Make sure you check him out. Also, of course, follow him on Twitter at the New Jersey Globe, but of course at Wildstein. And of course, check it out at newjerseyglobe.com. Folks, I cannot say enough. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in here on this Monday night. Again, thank you for the traffic. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the love that you show this program each and every week. And for the haters, from the frenemies, for everybody who doesn't like it, you know what? I know you're going to tune in anyway. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid. It's Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, top 50 Latino via the Latino Spirit online magazine for 2020, 2021, and now in 2022, of course, folks. Also, the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media, and without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. Yes, folks, it's me, Fernando Uribe, saying happy June to you all. Once again, happy 3rd birthday to Real Talk. 3 years and counting, still going strong here on Jersey First TV. Folks, have a great rest of your week. Please party responsibly, and we'll see you next Monday night here for Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. Have a great night, everybody.